of the most populous nation in Africa. With less than 3 months to the commencement of a new administration, there are concerns from different quarters on how the incoming president will fix Nigeria's economy, which has been underperforming. Well, global issues and all of that has affected the economy for the past few years. But the country's economy, no doubt, has been faced with myriads of challenges, such as dwindling oil revenue, such as energy poverty, exchange rate volatility, rising debt, high inflationary trend, amongst others. As the next president assumes office on May 29, 2023, let's set some economic agenda for the incoming administration. And to do that, I'm being joined live in the studio. He is the director of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. It's good to have you in the studio. Thank you so much, Dr. Yusuf. Yes, indeed, a well-contested election, keenly contested election, looking at the votes and how it all went on. But most times we like to stay with the figures and the economy on this part. Even if you like to comment on the election too, you're free. But for me, I want to start this way. For an economy that stands at inflation of 21.82%, that's the last figures we got from the MBS. GDP figures that also came out sometime last week shows that there was a drop and a lot of performance in the non-oil space. That seems to be good. But for you, what is your overview of all of these challenges? What is in the plate at the moment for the Tinubu team to start to think of as they get ready to take the mantle of leadership by May 29th?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to appeal to all the political actors, to manage the current situation carefully so that we don't create any major disruptions. Obviously, there were grievances as to the outcome, the processes, and so on. And I'm glad that the major contenders have also appealed to their followers and supporters, to be peaceful. Because without peace, there is nothing else we can do. If we don't have peace, we cannot even be talking about the economy. So the political actors have a responsibility to display maturity and allow matters to be handled constitutionally. That is very critical. Having said that, the economy, just as you said in your intro, is facing a lot of challenges already. And if there is any expectation from the incoming administration, is to quickly fix the economy. I think we need to look at what needs to be done very urgently, because there is no time to waste. We have lost a lot of ground as far as economic recovery is concerned. So my expectation is that by now, the president-elect should have set up an economic transition team, a transition committee on the economy. So that apart from what is contained in the manifestos are a bit general in the way they are written.
We need specifics.
We need specifics now on what is actionable and what we can segment into what we call the quick wins. Because when you have this kind of keenly contested election, you need to worry also about legitimacy. You need to worry about how you can instill confidence in the totality of Nigerians, whether or not they voted for the candidate that won. So that legitimacy requires that we quickly look at what are the quick wins that can bring succor to the majority of Nigerians. So that transition committee should be able to put on the table of the president-elect, so that within the first 1 month, we should roll out some quick policies that can bring some immediate relief. Then secondly, around this issue of transition committee, we should also worry about the quality of economic governance. Yes, we have challenges with inflation, we have challenges with poverty, unemployment, high debt, and all of that. All of these are a reflection of the shortcomings in the quality of economic governance. And to have quality economic governance, we need a quality team, technical team, that will be put together by the president-elect. We need to ensure that we have the right people in the right places, irrespective of their political affiliation, whether they are politicians. What we need is a good team. We could have some of them within the political party. We could have some of them outside the political party. What is important is that Nigeria as a country, we have a robust pool of quality human beings, quality intellectuals, quality expertise across all sectors. So it behoves on the president-elect to harness all this expertise to get this job done. So the kind of economic team that we form matters a great deal. And it's not only about forming an economic team, it's also about listening to what they say. Because even under this administration, we have some quality members of the economic management team. But when you look at the outcomes of policy or the output from government as far as economic policy is concerned, to be clear to you that this economic team or even the economic doesn't have an input into some of these policies. So it is important that when we have a team, we should also have a listening ear for that team. And the good thing about Asiwaju is that he has a reputation of assembling very good team. That is one of his strongest points. He's not claiming to be an economist, but I'm very hopeful and optimistic that he'll be able to assemble a good, and he listens to them, and he also gives free hand to them to manage and fix technical things. So that is my expectation. If we're able to do that, that will be very good. And we also need an economic governance framework that is inclusive. I talk about inclusion in the sense of stakeholder engagement. Because you cannot be running an economy without listening to your stakeholders. That has been missing in this under the current administration. Nobody knows it all. And when you are dealing with economy, particularly when you are dealing with issues of investment, you need to listen to the stakeholders. You don't have to take everything that the stakeholders tell you, but at least you have the opportunity of quality feedback, as to the effectiveness of policy, the appropriateness of policy. So such consultation also helps to enrich the policy process. And we also need a regulatory environment that is more friendly. It is not good to have regulators that are overbearing, that are intimidating, that discourage investment.
Yes.
It is not good at all. And we have seen quite a lot of that under the current administration. Regulators are supposed to listen. They are supposed to have their ears to the ground. And they are supposed to see investors as their partners. Because the ultimate goal is to grow the economy and create prosperity for everybody. So that aspect of inclusiveness and stakeholder engagement and feedback is very critical in the policy process. Then we should reduce the dominance of political economy. Now, when you have an economy, the president has a lot of powers. But when we reduce economic management to a platform for patronage, it damages the economy. It doesn't allow for level playing field. So that kind of arrangement or that kind of approach or philosophy should be discouraged. We should have an economic system that has a level playing field for all players, irrespective of your political affiliation, your tribe, whether you are foreign, whether you are local, whether you are whatever ethnic group. There has to be a level playing field so that we minimize what you call the rent economy. Rent economy is where people sow where they didn't reap. We need to have an economy where entrepreneurs are fully rewarded according to their ingenuity, their creativity, and their capacity in enterprise. That is very important, so that it is clear to everybody that yes, this is a fair regime. And we need to expand the scope of markets. We should not be obstructing the market. I'm not saying that market can solve all problems. But when you are in an economy where you have weak institutions, the smaller the scope of states or the states in the economic activities, the better. And when you have an economy that has very robust, enterprising population, the more you open up the markets, the better for the economy, the better for growth, the better for ability to create jobs. So we should not be obstructing the market. Of course, in economies, we recognize market failure. In instances of market failure, government can intervene. But government should not, from the get-go, being at the driver's seat, allocating this, allocating that, and exercising undue discretion. Because the more discretion you exercise in economic management, the more problems you create for the economy. The more you create room for influence. You know, those who have connections and all of that. All those things are not good for the economy. So, by way of general principle of economic governance, these are some of the very fundamental things that should be put in place so that we can attract investment. Then there are issues of reforms.
Yes.
Maybe as we go for that,
yes, we'll go,
we can highlight
we
the
really need to
critical
talk about reforms. We're talking about trade reforms and all of that kind of reforms, structural reforms, and all of it. Yeah, I wanted to say that during the campaigns and all of the meetings, I noticed that Asiwaju Tinubu actually met like 2-3 times with the private sector, and the third one was with the techie guys, and letting them tell him what the challenges were, and he also told them what. So I'm thinking that maybe that coming together, talking to business people, that should be a continued process where organized private sector players in the industry come in maybe once in a quarter or whatever to talk about the issues so that they can pick a point and maybe address some of these issues instantly. But I want to ask this question. I actually talked more about student loan, mortgage, and all of this, like the way it's being done in foreign countries. How feasible, how practicable do you think this is in our part of the world?
Well, those things are important, but they are not the big issues. And that is why I was talking about having a very solid team. Even in the education system, there are bigger issues than issues of student loan. I mean, you see what has happened to us? As we speak now, their salaries have not been paid. There are issues around investment in the education sector. And he raised the issue of, and rightly so, of autonomy for the university system. How do we create a framework to properly fund university education? Those, for me, are bigger issues as far as education is concerned. The private sector is also playing a very big role in the education and health sectors. What kind of policy support are we going to give the private investors in education? They are not taking government subvention, they are not taking anything, but they are contributing to the building of human capital of the country. It's not the same thing as other kind of businesses. What kind of tax concession are we going to give them? What kind of support are we going to give them? If we take cosmopolitan cities like Lagos and Abuja and all of that, we probably have more private schools than government schools. And that's to show how much investment the private sector is bringing to the table as far as education is concerned. The issue of student loan is okay. But the point I'm making is that there are bigger issues.
So let's move to the structural issues here. Let's talk about some of the structural reforms and issues that we talk about. I remember trade that there's AFCFTA that we are supposed to also take advantage of. I think the president should, president-elect, when he comes in, should leverage on all of this because that market is huge.
It is huge. And this is the work of his economic team. The president cannot do everything.
Yes.
This is the work of the economic team. They should put solid materials on the table for the incoming president. I'm talking about reforms. One of the very first reforms that needs to happen is in the monetary policy space.
Very important.
We have said that over and over.
Very important.
We cannot continue to run this economy with the current foreign exchange policy that we have. So the number one thing I'm expecting from the president-elect within the first 1 month is to review the current foreign exchange policy regime. We cannot be running an economy where some players are getting foreign exchange at 435, others are getting it at 800, 750. It cannot work. And it's creating a lot of distortion, it's creating a lot of corruption, and it's also discouraging investment. So the number one thing in terms of reforms is for the new administration to do away with the current foreign exchange policy regime. That is extremely very critical. And we also need to look at, all these ways and means finances. Yes, the CBN governor has argued that the government has problems, that financial problems and all of that. One can understand. But that is not a justification to go to the extreme of giving out about 23 trillion in ways and means, in complete violation of the CBN Act.
And we're there chasing money in cash in circulation.
Cash in circulation. So there has to be a way to moderate that. Because apart from the fact that there is an infraction on the laws, it also creates serious macroeconomic challenges. Inflation and exchange rates. CBN has been complaining about mopping up liquidity, mopping up cash. The biggest challenge is the ways and means financing. So the incoming administration should see how to rein in on that. And we need to quickly roll back this cashless policy.
Yes.
The cashless policy, if it is for political reasons, well, we just wait for this election to come and go, so that we can go back to our normal lives. That currency policy has done a lot of damage, especially to small businesses, to micro enterprises, to our rural economy. Like many other people, I'm also from the village. I called the village the other day, there is no cash in the whole village. No cash at all. And how do you go to a village market and be talking of transfer? People in the city that sent money to their parents could not get the cash. I mean, why must we reduce the economy to that kind of level? Just because we are chasing vote buyers? Whether we're able to achieve much with that or not, it's a discussion for another day. But we need to deal quickly with these currency issues, so that the SMEs, the micro enterprise, and all these skills in the banks will disappear. And let me say this, it is not as if we have not made progress in cashless policy. In 2022, almost 400 trillion naira worth of transactions took place on the cashless platform. Cash to GDP in Nigeria is just about 1.5%. It's one of the lowest. Cash is not our problem. I was looking at the data recently. Total cash now outside the system is about 789 billion in January. How can you move from 2.6 trillion to 789 billion? How can you suck out so much cash from the economy? That is what is causing all these crises. And the problem has not gone away.
Yes, it hasn't.
So, the incoming president, if this thing did not go away under this administration, because nobody is complying with the Supreme Court ruling and all of that, so the incoming administration will see into that, without prejudice to the autonomy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Institutions are meant to serve the people. They are meant to improve the lives of the people. They are not meant to impoverish the people and make life difficult for the people. Then there are issues around all this CRR and all of that. Then there is the oil and gas sector reform. Well, there are two major sectors that need urgent reform. It is foreign exchange reform and the oil and gas sector reform. We have been talking about subsidy. We have been talking about inability to meet our OPEC quota. The current administration has done at least fairly well in trying to curb all this oil theft and all of that. But we need to redouble our efforts in that sector to be able to attract more investment, to be able to stop the leakages in the sector. I know that the subsidy removal is a bit tricky. Socially, a bit sensitive.
Yeah.
But it's something that has to be done. So we have to come up with creative ways to deal with it so that we can remove all this corruption and all these challenges in the oil and gas sector. Then there are reforms that need to take place in the trade policy area. Trade policy is about import and export. It's also about trade facilitation. We should not have an economy where an investor will clear a container in Apapa, duly cleared by the customs. And the same customs will be on the road, asking all sorts of questions and extorting people. All those things are quick wins for the new administration. Those checkpoints should disappear. They have to disappear. If Asiwaju wants people to immediately feel the impact of a new administration, we cannot have a situation where an institution of government will have cleared a container, the same institution will be on the road at 2, 3, 4, 5 places.
What's the essence of clearing at the port if you are still going to go through that?
Exactly. So all those things are being carried out with such impunity. Under the incoming administration, all those things have to stop. And we have to look at our tariffs. Some tariffs are too high, especially for those who are producing. How high is the tariff? So there has to be transparency around the tariff management. It's not that because you have influence, you can get a high tariff or a low tariff. You should have an engagement with stakeholders and come up with a tariff that is fair to everybody, without really compromising maybe the revenue objective of government. But we also need to be mindful of the investment objective. It's not everything that is about revenue. You know? Then there are regulatory issues. There are so many.
I think we need to have a part of this discussion. It's so much. I totally agree with you. But at least we've been able to make a lot of sense out of those we're able to trash today. So maybe we'll just segment this and get to talk about the regulatory, because it's really interesting and these are important things that we need to get.
The regulatory environment needs to be much better.
Yes. So that impact is very, very important. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the Director of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. As usual, it's always great having you in the studio. Thank you so much for your time. It's good to have you join us. Well, indeed, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it.